the middle of my senior year with a stroke in my face. I literally stressed myself out so much that I woke up and I had a facial Bell's palsy. So my whole
Right.
face was drooped. It was awful. Sixth grade, you know, what else a
Right, of
girl's
course,
gonna
because
do? Yeah,
that's what all
what
girls
else?
as in 6th grade
That's
do,
right.
right?
Yeah, especially is me.
Right.
um, but everybody actually went under, so I was pretty impressed. I didn't even have a script. I just kind of went with wherever I was guided to go with that. I called one of my students and said, "Did you feel that?" And she says, "Yes." I said, "Where are we?" I literally knew that I had come into a completely new timeline. I didn't know how I knew, I just knew that I felt like a foreigner. We're interconnected. Nobody in this world is disconnected from another person. Me releasing childhood trauma and working on that, that would resurface for me in other ways until I really made that commitment to really look at how I can, change the way I'm feeling. And instead of going maybe from a victim perspective, like, oh shit, this happened to me, to more of like, okay, this happened to me. How
Right.
might I make the best out of this situation? See, thinking of the tower card, it's the idea that you have to sometimes bring things down to the foundation so that it can be built from the foundation back up in a way that's conducive and healing. Well, they said 9/11 was a big wake up for everybody. So
That was
2001, huge. That was one of my prior to the timeline jump. That was the first timeline jump I ever had, but I would say the very first awakening I had.
okay, we're recording. All right. So, this is the Spirit Warrior podcast, and my guest now is international medium Tara Malouf. I made sure to say your name in my head like 100 times because I didn't want to get it wrong or butcher it. So Tara is a medium of the Akashic Records reader. She's a Reiki master, healer, and teacher. She also reads multiple different decks for Oracle and Tarot, and you offer transformative experiences to help people connect with their higher selves and achieve balance and harmony in their lives. That's a mouthful, but I know that that's what people are looking for right now. So that's phenomenal, and I'm excited to talk about that. So, with compassion and sensitivity, Tara uses her gifts to bring messages of comfort, healing, and closure to those who are grieving, provide insight and guidance about their soul's purpose and current challenges, and offer energy healing sessions that promote relaxation, balance, and healing on all levels. I need all of that right now. Like, just yes. Uh, so that's great. So I will post all the links for Tara's website, YouTube, Facebook, anything that she wants me to put out there for her. I will do that, and then you can book a session with her. I think you're booked out for like 2 years or something, right? Like
Yeah, for sure.
it's yeah. Like I remember reading one of your posts. You're like, okay, I'm booked out for like 2024. So I was like, oh my god. So that obviously tells you something that she's one of the best. So yeah, I'll put all those links. So feel free to book your session. As you know, I have a list of topics, but first I want to start from the beginning. So I want to start with how I found you. Okay, as we'll talk about, I followed and read eight. I don't read a lot, so I listened to eight of Dolores Cannon's book, as we call her Grandma D now, right? So I listened to eight of her books, and this was during a time where I was going through that big, what is my purpose? What is my meaning? Because I was going through a transition in life with job and whatnot. So I was, of course, asking, well, like, I need these answers, right? And so I started following Dolores, and then I found her Facebook page, and then I found out that Lara Starr, I think that's how you pronounce her name, that she was running the page, but she created her own follower page. And so I follow that. And then she made a post one time. And just for viewer reference, we are one state apart. I'm in Cleveland, Ohio. You're in PA, outside of Carlisle or in Carlisle, I believe. So you do like mediumship at a shop there, a local shop. I guess Laura went in there and she wanted to like add you to her team, and you just blew her away with your reading. And so I was like, well, this is phenomenal. Like this is, I want to talk to her. I want to advertise her. I want to sell her, promote her. You know, like I want to get her what she does, her talent, skills, everything out there into like so for people can see it. So this is the start of that. So that's how I found you. And then the first thing I guess I want to start with is how long have you been a medium for?
Mm. Well, first, thank you. That was quite the introduction. I'm so humbled and grateful and thankful for you for allowing me to come on your show and to talk with everybody. And I'm smiling so hard, Kevin, that my face hurts. Joy. It's just a true joy. And I'm so happy to connect with you. And you're just an amazing, bright soul. So thank you for all the work that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Since birth, I literally rolled out in my mom's womb with the gift. So it was one of those situations where I knew at a very young age that I could see things beyond our physical realm, and always giving those messages, even as soon as I was able to speak. I think I was like 3 when I read my first person. So
Wow.
I've been doing this for quite some time.
So
Hmm.
I guess that kind of goes into this whole conversation where we're all gifted. We all have the gift, right? It just some people
Absolutely.
are more advanced, they're more developed, I guess, and you know, like you said, like from the womb. And then some people have it but they don't really know, they question it. Like I have a buddy right now, and he is kind of coming into his like beginning receiving messages, and he's like, you know, nervous. And you know, I am much better, like most people, at giving advice versus being the person to take my own advice, right? So I'm always like, you know, hey, if you need anything, like I'm here, you know. So we kind of come from, we're kind of cut from the same cloth, so to speak. So it makes it hard because people like me and people like him are not in, we're not naturally like from this spiritual world. And so like with the transition that we're seeing, you know, galactically and with Gaia and spiritually and like everything, it's like you kind of are like being forced to be in it or you're left out.
Yes, everybody is born with a gift. So I do want to tell you, like anybody listening today, we can all tap into when we've had moments of insight or when our intuition is either, talking to us gently. Sometimes our intuition will yell at us loudly, whatever it takes to get our attention. But you're
Right.
right. A lot of people are, there are a lot of people that are born into the gift, and there's a lot of people that develop later on. But the point here is to encourage it and to practice it. So I'm glad that you brought that up. But everybody can do this. It just takes some
Absolutely.
practice. Yeah, for sure.
So what I'm hearing is your next step is to write a book for how to practice and
Yes.
make this better. Okay.
I'm taking notes. I'll put
All
that with the
right.
other 2 books that I'm writing.
And make sure you put like you know, with thanks to Kevin for giving this, you know,
Yes.
this idea
Yeah,
started.
that's right. Imma have you write the introduction, friend.
I could do that. Absolutely.
Awesome. Yes.
The next part of your gifts is Akashic records reading. So okay, this is a huge topic, right? And I
Big
think
one.
that this is big, and this is also getting thrown around a lot in spiritual
Mhm.
circles with Akashic record readers, Akashic records. And in one of Dolores's books, she had talked about a few of her subjects that were like in the Akashic records, right? So I'm trying to kind of paint a picture here of perception, right? Because now we're going to go into perception's reality talk. So their perception is that there was like, and I'm paraphrasing because I'm trying to remember from the book, golden like spires is what I think the word was, that
Wow.
are in
Mm.
the Akashic records, or like that's how they saw it. And then I've had other people describe the Akashic records as like a room where there's a movie playing and you're watching things play out like on a screen, right? And then there's other parts that I've read that they say it's like a library, like a giant library, and there's a Akashic Records gatekeeper, a librarian that kind of like lets you in. And so there's one aspect where you can go to a certain area and pull out a book and open it up to like a person's whole entire life, right? Because I mean, I've done a little bit of reading on it. I'm not an expert like you or anything, but I love to understand how things are how things can be, how people see things differently, but they're the same. And then I've heard that the Akashic Records is you asking you asking spirits specific questions, and they give you these answers, maybe in that film room projection kind of format. So with all of those, I painted so many pictures here. So with all of those, they're all
Beautiful.
beautiful.
Hmm.
So with all of those, what is your experience, and can you explain the kind of understand as well?
Sure. I'm going to go into the records to answer you. That's all right.
Okay.
Because Tara's opinion's golden, but I guess we want it directly from source too. But I'm also a conscious part of this, so I'll be here too. All
Okay.
right. So I'm just going to take a second to do what I do to get in there.
All right.
Okay. Okay, so Kevin, the exact way that you described the Akashic Records is how others have perceived it. So one of the things I would tell people is that when you're connecting with the Akashic Records, or if I'm connecting to the Akashic Records on someone else's behalf, the way that I observe and the way that I intuit information from the Akashic Records tends to be very specific to the person that I'm reading for. So if they're very visual, very creative, very intuitive type people, I may see more visuals in the reading. If they're an empath or somebody that can feel things very deeply, I will start to talk about emotion. So I will be able to emote those answers in the Akashic Records. But to answer your question, the last thing that you described is exactly how I envision the Akashic Records, because I spend time in there as well. I do it for my own research, I do it for my own learning, my own spiritual growth. I'm not just the teacher, I'm also the student always. I do see it as a vast library with halls and records as far as you can see. But I really zeroed in when you said the gatekeepers, because the very first time I started working with the Akashic Records, I had to gain the trust of the guides. I had to prove myself to the energy. And I have seen them as golden beings of light or columns. So I want to verify that that information is correct. So yeah, it really depends on how I'm reading, who I'm reading. I don't just read for people. I can read for pets. I can read for spaces. I work a lot with realtors and people working in properties, um, clearing properties. So yes, I've even been in records before where people are very technical, and I'll envision their records as touch screens. So it's quite fascinating how each individual person, the way that I perceive the records, the way that they perceive the records. It's very
Wow.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah, so that basically their perception shapes your reality. Is that
correct. Yeah,
that's
that's
really
a big one.
interesting.
It
Yeah,
is.
that's it, because it's no longer my perception is creating my reality. I did read one of your posts uh where, it's talked about that our perception is absolutely creating our reality, right?
Mhm,
So
mhm.
when we're not in perception of something, it doesn't exist, which is a whole mind bender for people
Yeah,
that live like on a
yeah,
linear, and they're
yes.
like, how this doesn't compute. And so that's when you have people that just like shut down.
It's big. It's bigger than we can even possibly imagine with our human brains. We're interconnected. Nobody in this world is disconnected from another person. But you hit it right when you said the idea that we perceive our reality based on our own understanding. So our own understanding is how we see each other. We're both
Right.
agreeing to a set of ideas here, and we're creating that. So yeah.
Right. It's kind of like if I see a car and I say, "Hey, do you see that red car?" and you go, "Yeah, I see the red car." We're both agreeing that we see the car and it's red,
Bingo.
which is so like try
It's
to wrap your
wild.
head around that. Yeah, so I think that is
Mm.
that's phenomenal. So obviously you can, as you kind of answered this already, but you can do readings remotely. You can do them for anything. That's something you just did a ghost hunt in New Jersey, paranormal investigation. So
Yeah, I've been all over. I'm
all right.
launching a show. I'll be launching a show this year. Well, January, February.
What show? Tell me about that.
It's just still in the
I have
works,
to wait
but
and see.
yeah, it's like good. Got to tune in.
Yeah, right. I
If you
like that
like the
little like
paranormal,
the
you're
hook.
gonna love this. Yes,
Right.
yeah, for sure.
Okay. Absolutely. So where do you expect to see that? Like, is that going to be like on Netflix, on Hulu, like local
I love
TV?
it. It's going to be on our new platform that Laura Starr is creating with a bunch of other practitioners. We're all part of the collective. It's called Divinate, and I'll spell it. It's divn8.com.
Okay.
It's going to be really huge. Like, we just literally launched it. So a lot of my shows will be on that platform because we're creating it with other friends and practitioners,
Right.
but also on YouTube too, because I think
Okay.
YouTube, I like to do things very independently. So all my projects, I like to do those through YouTube.
Absolutely. I mean, I think business wise, you don't want to ever get like stuck into one. You don't want to box yourself in, right? Don't put all your eggs in one basket, as they say, right? So,
Exactly. Yeah, it's good. I've turned down several network TV shows since 2012 because they always come with stipulations and,
right.
like they want to know about the behind the scenes, which I don't mind. As you follow me on social media, I am an open book. Like, I am just authentic and I love to share all the things that excite me. And sometimes I'm like a 12-year-old, like, oh my God, look at the world. And I'll share it on my
Right.
social media. So I'm very cool about that. But a lot of times they'll try to bring your kids into it and family, and they're already dealing with mommy being like connected to spirit, so I figured
Right.
give them the choice, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we're going to do it ourselves. I think it's the best way to keep it real.
That is phenomenal. Maybe whoever's listening to this, don't get distracted if you're working on
Don't.
projects. Just keep
Mhm.
at it. Keep moving forward in your direction. If you need to shift directions, that's fine. But I think
Yep.
that's really important for people out there to hear that, to keep going. Because I know we're in a time right now where we're in the ups and downs, right? The lulls and the highs. So um, that's something that I really wanted to at least say. But I did see Divinate, and that's kind of what I was getting at was that that's fantastic. So I'm super excited to tune into that.
Awesome.
Um,
And there's room for
so
everybody. We were going to say, collaboration is the name of the game now because everybody has some information they want to share. And
right,
because everybody's tapping into the spirituality topics, I think this is a great way for us to all kind of have a centralized place where we can share those platforms. Like, you're welcome to come join us too, because like you have an incredible amount of knowledge as well. And so we say to anybody, just start where you are, start in your communities, and build that up, because community is how we're all going to get through this great shit.
Reiki. So you're a Reiki master.
Yes, I've been a Reiki master since 1990. Nope, I started my Reiki journey in 1994. I graduated from Reiki 1, and it took me to about 2008 to complete the whole Reiki process just because of life, kids. I'm a massage therapist by trade, so I was busy doing massage. But it was a complimentary. I can tell you the story of how I got into it if you
Absolutely.
want to. Okay, great. So my senior year of high school was incredibly stressful for me. And I woke up the middle of my senior year with a stroke in my face. I literally stressed myself out so much that I woke up and I had a facial Bell's palsy. So my whole
Right.
face was drooped. It was awful. And long story short, living near New York City, New Jersey at the time, I went to top neurologists. Nobody could figure out like what was happening, why it was happening. So I went to a friend of mine whose mom was a massage therapist and a Reiki master. I had no idea what massage that was. I thought it was like when, people come and do this on your back
Yep.
and they're
Sui.
like
Yeah.
shimmy chops, and
right.
like really, like big ladies, knocking you out kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Like
um, you
leaning
know,
into you with that elbow.
yeah. So I was a little concerned. I'm like, how is this going to unstress me? Like, how is this going to
right.
de-stress? But long story short, it was the first time in my life, honestly, where I felt very present. Like, it was the first time in my life that I didn't feel like I was in fight or flight. So my face came back. It was a miracle. Even the doctor's like, whatever you did, it was amazing because nothing else was working. And so that's when I decided, right there, senior year, I was going to be going off to beauty school. I wanted to do hair, makeup, and all that stuff. So I switched over and enrolled in massage therapy school. And part of that was learning Reiki and everything, Reikiing everything. I use Reiki with my kids. I've taught Reiki. I lived Reiki. In fact, my Facebook page, since Facebook was incepted, I used to be on there as Tara's Reiki Garden.
Okay.
So it was one of those things where I was probably one of the very first people to start talking about Reiki on social media. So
Wow.
yeah.
That's pretty awesome. I mean,
It's
that's a
big. Reiki is one of those techniques that can allow you to stress less and be in that present moment. And I think that's something that can reach everybody. So there's a message for everybody there. If you're looking for another way to relax and you're kind of fed up maybe with meditation, because meditation can be very difficult, why not try Reiki? It's
yeah.
easy.
I have a difficult time with meditating. Absolutely. Like because my mind is constantly going but the part about being a spiritual warrior is that when you meditate, it's not about pushing the thoughts aside. It's about meditating and pushing through the thoughts and
Yeah,
observing them. Right. So
that's right. Hmm.
it's absolutely I'm not going to put out a course on meditating because I still haven't mastered it, but that's still one of my difficult tasks. So to launch into that, also I am not a Reiki master, but I am Reiki 2 certified.
Awesome. So you learned
So
all the symbols then and all. Did your third eye open for you during that?
so that was I don't think so. Maybe it's hard to like I still have difficult time sensing energy. There was a yoga studio right by work, and I went there and I saw that there was the Reiki 1 and 2 classes, and they were like 200 each, and I was like, I just started this job, I don't have money for it, so I put out into the universe, I want to do this. This is what I want. I bought a money candle. I lit it and basically put out to the universe. That's what I wanted. So a couple days later, I went to the casino with a coworker, and I think in like 3 hours, I made $1,600 on blackjack.
That's
And
awesome.
so I was able to pay for both the classes in cash.
Mhm.
And I like basically put that back into the rock shop where I bought the candle. And so I bought tarot card or oracle cards. I bought a yoga mat, a yoga bag, like just other stuff, right? And so I definitely felt like it's there if you ask for it, and
Absolutely.
you just
Mm.
have to trust how it's going to happen, right? So
It seems like your guides really wanted you to do that.
they did. I
Yeah.
think so. But my problem is like I feel like um I did it, I completed it, but I need to fine tune it. You know what I mean? And so
Practice. Mhm.
yeah, and I never truly felt like I was good at it, I guess. Even though like I did learn the symbols and I had the ritual, but I never felt like I was good at it. And so like I feel like I need to start over, I guess. Well, first, okay, before we dive into like actual conversation topic, I have a couple
Mhm.
questions. This
Okay.
is this is a small Q&A part.
Q&A.
Yeah. Um Signs from the other side. So when we see cardinals, why are cardinals the sign from a loved one? Like I see this and people say, "Oh, it's a cardinal, that's my loved one." And I'm not discrediting them, but I also know that there are people that will see things that are not what they are and associate a different meaning with it. And I don't, I mean, I'm not judging those people, but I want to understand why is it cardinals and not blue jays or pigeons or a hawk, why is it cardinals?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have very small amount of people that have had that be messages specifically. We want to tap into the idea that, well, from the beginning, birds always symbolize spirit. You know, we think about the ability that they can fly and that they can bring themselves to higher elevations. So our loved ones will use signs and symbols that we understand. So, you know, if a cardinal's showing up for someone, that may be a very specific message. I'll be honest, my grandmother, my grandma D, she was my greatest teacher. She was the one that raised me into my gift. She just loved red birds. So, you know, for her, I knew that she would always send me the cardinal. And I find a lot of cardinal feathers exactly around the time that I'll be talking about her. Or I'll notice at the feeder, they'll be at the feeder when I'm cooking her recipes. So it has to be like a little bit more specific. I always tell people, you know, there are doves. My dad sends doves. He actually sent a dove. My dad's in spirit now for a few years, but he sent
Okay.
doves to my aunt and me at the same time. So we were texting each other going like, "Do you see the doves? Do you have two doves?" So I mean, we're going to go for a little bit deeper validations, but I think to answer your question, a lot of people associate cardinals with remembrance. I think that has a
Okay.
lot to do symbolically with the color red. We think of Remembrance Day and we think of poppies that the veterans will wear, you know, like people will wear wear in remembrance of veterans. So
Yeah.
red is a remembrance color. So that
Okay.
maybe that answers your question there. But yeah, sometimes they do send cardinals, but most likely it's going to be very specific signs that that person would recognize their loved one with. And these are the type of validations that I ask for usually generally right in the beginning of the reading when I'm connecting. Because I want to
Right.
make sure I'm talking to the right person. You know, I have a set of guides that I work with, and of course, there's the gatekeeper. So we have to make sure that everything goes through a check process. And so, if somebody says, you know, cardinals, it's actually pretty rare for us to mention that in readings. I've been doing this professionally probably for about 30 years now, and it's only come up maybe 3 or 4 times. So,
Wow. Okay.
yeah,
So
it's pretty
I
cool.
guess it's just in my little circle that I think
Yeah.
about cardinals. Okay.
But think of
Interesting.
the color red, right? That red is passion, red is love, red is commitment. Red has a lot of connotations. If you really want to understand how spirit teaches or how spirit talks, I think the best thing we can do is learn about symbologies and what symbols mean, especially what they may mean to you. So I'll give you
Right.
for an example. As a medium, I work with my own signs and symbols. As a hypnotherapist, I have quite the brain of that. So spirit will use very specific symbols and understandings that I know that I then can pull my information forward and then release that information or give that information to another person as a means to validate. So
Okay.
that's pretty
So
cool. It's a
you
good
just touched on
question.
something that I want to ask. Okay. So you are also a hypnotherapist.
Okay. Well, I did my first, I actually talked about this on Laura Starr's show a couple weeks ago, but I did my very first hypnotherapy regression at a slumber party in 6th grade. You know, what else a
Right. Of
girl's
course.
going to
Because
do? Yeah.
that's what all
What
girls
else?
as in sixth grade
That's
do,
right.
right?
Yeah, especially is, me.
Right.
um, but everybody actually went under. So I was pretty impressed. I didn't even have a script. I just kind of went with wherever I was guided to go with that. But I
So
safely
you
guided
basically
them.
like
I did.
hypnotized them all and walked around and
Yeah.
ate all the rest of the pizza and drank the
Yes,
rest
I
of the pop
did.
and came back and
Yep.
were like, guys, somebody just came in and ate all the pizza. Like,
Yep. I was very cool. Like a lot of people wanted me to come to their slumber parties after that. Professionally, through my massage therapy, being a massage therapist, we have to take a certain amount of continuing education credits each year.
right.
So after a while, after doing this for so long, I kind of ran out of classes to take. So my Reiki master teacher, she's no longer here with us in the physical, she's in spirit, but her name was Ann Waters. Amazing gal. She's an astrologist, a healer, an artist, and a teacher. She taught me hypnotherapy. So I did over 5,000 hours of physical training with her. And that was probably, I want to say I started that in 2003. And so I use that as a means to help people facilitate emotional blocks, also do past life regressions to help people identify where they may be stuck on certain issues. But hypnotherapy is just another modality to which we can really help people relax and tap in and to allow themselves to have some abilities to see that they are connected. So
Right.
hypnotherapy is very, very interesting work.
Right.
It's a very
So
interesting. Mhm.
it definitely is. And I know that for people that are familiar with hypnotherapy or at least like QHHT. So do you
Mhm.
do the QHHT method? Have you kind of adapted to that?
Maybe. I say
Okay.
that. I have quite the interesting story about that as well. We could just do like hours of terror stories. Um,
I mean, I
I-
would love that.
so back in 2000, I want to say it's 2015. It may well have been 2016 early. And the reason why I say that is there's a little bit of cloud of confusion around the time frame for me. But prior to 2015, Dolores Cannon and the QHHT practice or that procedure of hypnotherapy didn't exist to me. It wasn't
Okay.
on my timeline.
That's interesting. Can you explain that? Because I feel
I'm
like
gonna
people
try.
coming into that are like,
Yeah,
right? I know because I'm
I
like,
can
you're looking at
try.
me, and you knew I
Yeah,
was gonna
I'm
ask
like,
to explain that.
mhm,
So
sure. All right. So it was probably, this was around the time of one of my greatest awakenings. We would say that right now, just to kind of back explain it. I guess that's a Taoism, back explain. Let's back explain.
back explain. I'd like. I'm gonna
That's
have to
another
write that
one.
down.
I was around during the last wave of people waking up. We're right now currently in the second wave. Okay. And
Okay.
we'll talk about that a little bit more. But just understand that there was a group of us that already kind of have come into spirituality in different points in their lives. Me,
Yes.
I was born in into it. I was teaching students, I was teaching mediumship development, intuitive development, all that stuff, to this very first wave of people that were only just waking up. So I was a young teacher, right, in a field of other teachers helping people recognize what's happening.
So
So around that time, yeah, I was
when
going to
was that
say,
first wave?
I would say probably 2012 to 2015 ish.
That makes sense. That makes
Mm-hmm.
sense because there's a lot of
It
people
does.
around the 2012 end of the world type thing, and they
Yes.
probably got into that. Okay, that makes sense. Oh, so the
Yeah.
second wave is like 2020, 2021.
Yeah, I would definitely say we have two pivotal markers here that can show you every time some sort of big global event happens, people start to wake up.
Right.
So
All right. Sorry,
I
I
was,
didn't mean to interrupt.
no, yeah, no worries. I'm just trying to, it's so hard to talk about myself. I'm so used to working with other people. So that's something I'm shadow working on right now. But, and then try to back explain is another thing. Um, my life is weird. I jump timelines.
It's
um,
totally okay. I jump subjects, so this
I
works
guess
out.
cool. All right. So I was teaching a lot of classes around that time. My events would sell out. Working in Princeton, a very big area. I don't know if you heard of the globalness. I'm sorry, the Global Consciousness Project, which was headed out of Princeton.
Okay.
So we were in an area that was just ripe for people wanting to learn as much as they can about spirituality and metaphysics. And here I was just teaching all the classes. So it was a very busy time of me helping other people and being a mentor to other people. I remember waking up one morning, literally woke up, and I called one of my students and said, "Did you feel that?" And she says, "Yes." I said, "Where are we?" I literally knew that I had come into a completely new timeline. I didn't know how I knew. I just knew that I felt like a foreigner, like somebody dropped me off at the wrong bus stop. That's the only way I can describe it. Like
Okay.
that feeling when you're lost traveling and you're like, I don't know how I got here. It was
Yeah.
really discerning. I was freaked out about it. So I just kind of like decided to let it be. But I noticed around that time, my life completely changed, Kevin. Completely changed. The things that I used to like were different, meaning that
Yes.
I could only put up so much. I guess I had a spiritual awakening,
I was just gonna say this sounds
maybe,
exactly like a
which is
spiritual
weird.
awakening.
Yeah, I thought I
Yeah.
came awakened, but we can all have these moments. Like I've had several since, not timeline jumps. That hasn't happened. Um, Thank God, because that was crazy. But it was definitely a marker where I knew that I was in a different space. Not entirely convinced of how that happened or why that happened. I just
Right.
know that I felt like I was course corrected onto the best possible timeline. And then my life
Okay.
showed me that. Like knew I ended up getting divorced after 18 years, moved house twice. I have moved from the city to the country now, new husband, new life. And so we say like it happens. Like shift happens.
Right.
It's crazy.
I like that. Shift happens. That's you're gonna have to like patent that, trademark it, register it,
Yes,
do
get
everything.
some merch.
No, absolutely,
I
absolutely.
love
That's
it.
great. I love that too.
Mhm. But
I
it
mean,
was scary, not to make light of it though. I mean, like this could
yeah,
be scary. Like if somebody's listening and they're having this moment, please reach out to somebody, reach out to me, reach out to Kevin, reach out to our community. Because you don't have to walk this awakening alone. I think that's what's the beauty
yeah,
of the second wave. So I hope I answered that question. So Dolores didn't exist to me. I didn't exist to me. I'm probably a brand new person, but luckily I remained and retained a lot of Tara consciousness because obviously I'm still doing the same work. That's the only thing that's the same. So.
right. I mean, and that honestly can go into like I can launch from like 10,000 stories from that
Mhm.
story alone. Like, we
I
could
know.
talk
It's
about the
crazy.
jumping the timelines. We could talk about being a whole new person. I mean, every
That's
7
right.
years, molecularly
Yes.
structure wise, we are a whole new person, right? Physically.
I love it.
To Tara's point, if you are going through this where you do feel lost, there are resources out there. You are not alone. Everybody is going through this to some degree. There are some people that are further along in their journey than others. I just like you had a spiritual awakening a couple of years ago, and you can have more than one. Don't I really want to break
Yep.
this whole programming to think that once you have your spiritual awakening, you're done, because it's not.
That's right.
I feel like, and this is my opinion, and based on my research and my knowledge, is a set accumulation of all my research from everybody else. When we have spiritual awakenings, there's a process, right? And there are several people that specialize in this process on YouTube that I've researched. I literally just watch. I don't have cable TV. I have YouTube,
Yeah.
and I
That's
watch
awesome.
YouTube.
Yeah.
So
Me
you know,
too.
and it's great. There's so much information out there that like you can dive into, and you come out 3 hours later binge watching YouTube and you're like, what did I just watch? Nothing is real. Like, we
No.
live in a matrix,
Mm-mm. Mud flood.
and yeah, yes, exactly. Somebody mentioned that and I go, I've never heard of that. And I researched and I
Crazy.
go, oh my God. Yeah. So the big thing is there are communities, there and you have to feel it out, right? Because like I went to a bunch of these communities, and you know be a participant, be a listener, right? Because as you had said, and I love what you said, I'm not just a teacher but I'm always a student. That is the same concept that we as spiritual warriors always embody, that we are not seeking to we don't seek power over others, but we seek to empower others.
That's
So
big. Mhm.
that is something, yes. And so be a student when you go into these groups, because that way it will help you to kind of discern from people that are going through these spiritual traps, right? There's like a bunch of spiritual traps. One of them is spiritual ego, spiritual superiority, where you're looking at people and they're going, well, I'm more spiritual advanced than you. I've been awake for 3 years, and it's that ego where they feel the need to be better than you. And it's that they're not better or worse than you. They're at a different point in their journey. So let's talk about your journey, because I feel like journeys are huge and people need to understand, and they want to understand the journey and what it's like. It's just a never ending, it's a circle is what it is,
It
because
really is.
you have your awakening moment, your aha, then you have your like understanding, and then you have your this and that, and then you have your dark night of the soul where you're like nothing, everything is depressing, and then you learn something new. And so talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, let's and in fact where we are in the timeline they're talking about like the timeline switch for me, I started right at this 2015 mark is when I started noticing the Mandela effect.
I was going to ask you, in your
So,
timeline, is it Jiffy or Jiff?
Jiff.
Is it
But I go
Berenstein
back
or
and forth.
Berenstain?
Bernstein, and I used to teach preschool, so I got that one. Like I know
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, because
Mhm.
I watched the cartoon and I had the
Yes.
books. So
Mhm.
for context, I don't care who knows this. I'm 36 years old. I watched the show and I read the books, okay? And I
Yeah.
know that it was
Mhm.
Berenstein, right? So I think that's funny. I love the Mandela effect. I've had that conversation with people all the time, and there are so many different Mandela effects.
Mhm.
So let's go ahead and just jump back to,
Jump in. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, so the Mandela effect got me with the Bernstein Bears, and I think it was Interview with the Vampire, which I still go back. Sometimes when you've been at this long enough, your Mandelas blend. So now I don't know. It's
right,
like I remember
exactly,
both. I remember both of things now. So where am I? But
right.
it was around that time that I started to. I actually remember Google searching a Mandela effect and came across a YouTube channel, which is a group that I'm still part of, and happy to say they're an amazing group. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this to you before. Can I use words on here that are curse words?
Yeah, you can say whatever you want. I'm an adult.
The okay, well, just making sure, because the algorithms and all that. But the group is called the Unfuckers Group on Facebook and
Yeah,
on YouTube, headed up by Danny Arnold's McKenney at the time and Lisa Harrisman, I think her name is. I only say that because I remember watching a couple of their videos and they were explaining about the Mandela effect, why it's happening. And they just happened to be starting a group online. And I just joined the group just to have someone else to talk to. Because
right.
even though I talk to dead people and I can access Akashic records, I was still freaked out by this whole timeline jump thing, and no one else was talking about it except them at the time. So that's kind of where I really resonated with a lot of the messages. And I think through that group, I was able to make this transition through this new spiritual awakening with ease. It wasn't as scary or weird as it could have been. So, because I had other people to talk to that were going through similar stuff. So,
Right. Yeah,
yeah.
and that's one of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's one of those where we need that communication to feel,
Hmm.
and that part of like that group kind of thing. Like no man is an
Hmm.
island, right? No
No.
woman is an island either,
Mm-mm.
right? So
That's right. It
it's the
takes a
same
village.
concept.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hmm.
Communities, like you had said earlier,
Community.
communities. So
Hmm.
So jumping back to your awakening, what was
Hmm.
that like?
It was wild. It was crazy. I mean, at the time, like a lot of physical things changed. I physically changed my look. That's another thing that's happened since then, where like learning how to project. It's this whole new topic, I think, to dive down. But the way we can project, if we think and we create, then we can change the way we look. I literally changed my physical appearance. So if you were to look at
Okay.
pictures of me before that shift awakening, I look different. I look more relaxed and like I look different. It's hard to describe, but I even lost a lot of weight at the time, and it was pre-COVID, pre everybody bake bread at home situation. So maybe the next shift my ass will
Right.
get
You
smaller. I don't
I
know,
was gonna
but
say, I
maybe
feel like you're very upset about the baking bread at home.
yeah. Damn it, damn. Like what's up with that?
Well, I mean, but that is actual a valid point though, is that
Hmm.
like, to again to shift topics, that people
Yeah,
started eating
different.
unhealthy, they
Yeah,
different, right? Because
different.
they
Yep.
yeah. And some people ate healthier because they weren't
Hmm.
going to fast food and things. So
That's
but they
right.
were baking bread and things like, so
Yeah.
oh,
So I
don't even
had
get me
that. I
started
had
in
it.
like the food subject of like what's
It's
healthy,
big.
what's not.
It's big. It's really big. Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, even the physicality can change. Like, we can change who we are. We're not solid. We can, energy is energy. If you don't like what you're doing, you can change it. Spirit often will talk about, using thinking about symbologies. They'll use trees. If you don't like where you are, you can move. You're not a tree.
Right.
If you don't like which way you're growing, you can grow in a different direction. So we have power of choice, right? And at the time, like it just like my whole life changed. And it's changing again. So I would say I'm even going through a new shift now. And you know how it's all the shadow work shit comes up, all the
So
shadow stuff.
there's a lot of shadow work. There's a lot of
Hmm.
talk about that. So
Yeah.
shadow work, what is that? I mean, I
Mm.
I know what it is, but for our viewers that might see this for the first time, what is
Hmm.
shadow work, right?
I'll
So
go
how do we
in.
get into
Yeah.
that?
I'm going to let the records answer that one.
Okay.
Okay. Shadow work is all of the thoughts, beliefs, and ideas that we have, expectations that we may have that we're being asked to shed. If you can think of it like most creatures will have a moment where they shed their skin, or trees, you talk about, letting go in the fall and how things just naturally in nature will release. As
Yep.
humans, we get very stuck on our thoughts, beliefs, and ideas. So it's very hard for us to shake off the things that no longer serve us. So if that builds up after a while, it just becomes so much that it presents itself in a myriad of ways that could bring forth our attention, kind of like me having the stroke in my face. That was
Right.
nature's way of saying, if this young girl doesn't like calm it down now, she's going to have health issues, because obviously she's manifesting it into physical form. So letting go shadow work could be anything from, healing. It could be personal transformation. It could be recognizing trauma or parts of your life where healing needs to happen. So it's a big topic. And that's a lot of the work that I do as an Akashic Records coach, is
Okay.
helping people identify which areas are ready for release. Because if we don't release it, we can't allow new energy to come in. So
I
that's
was
shadow work.
I was just
Yeah.
gonna say, it's
Yeah.
like that is the dark night of the soul part where,
Hmm.
you're literally like people fear that, but that is the best
Right.
part because that
Yeah.
is where you are, to use your analogy, you're shedding the old you to
That's
make
right.
way for the new you, who you are on your way to become, right? So
That's right.
I like your
Yeah.
your description better than mine.
It's okay. I figured I always try to channel answers, but Tara's got some ideas there too, because I've just recently gone through this, and I'm not too liberty to talk about my personal stuff because, we all have people that are involved in our lives. But I had
Absolutely.
done this with parents. I had come into a family setting that wasn't ideal. There was a lot of times where it was pretty scary. So for me, releasing childhood trauma and working on that, that would resurface for me in other ways until I really made that commitment to really look at how I can, change the way I'm feeling. And instead of going maybe from a victim perspective, like, oh shit, this happened to me, to more of like, okay, this happened to me. How
Right.
might I make the best out of this situation? And also recognize the places and things that may trigger me. so that I can address that and then become not so reactive, right?
Absolutely.
I've been through it. I just like most of everybody has moments in their lives where they've really been through it. And so sometimes recognizing that that can come up as shadow work, and that may manifest not always with the people that may have caused the problems for us, but they could come in other ways in our lives. It could be people you work with, it could be, your spouse or your children or, your neighbor. So these themes or these topics or these areas that are just ripe for us to explore and to heal can manifest in different ways in our lives. And once you recognize that pattern, hopefully through the Akashic records and working with a coach,
Right.
it's easier for you to navigate your experience. I am probably the happiest I've ever been in my whole life, and I did that work. I showed up. I showed up, and you can show up too. If somebody's listening to this and it resonates, we
Absolutely.
can heal. We can heal from anything. We just have to, have somebody help us, and to recognize where sometimes we may have those wound attachments. Knowledge is power.
Absolutely. To kind of share personal stuff is I am healing from a toxic mother situation that, like I said, I'm 36 years old and I just got my own place 2 months ago, 2.5 months ago. So I'm healing from that as I'm trying to move forward. And I feel like I'm walking this line of the living in the 3D, living in the 5D, trying to get through the 4D and understand what all those mean while I'm doing it at the same time. So I'm like walking this line. I am like staggering between 3D and like seeking promotions and better financial security and like a different career path. But then I like shift back to doesn't matter because then it's real anyway. Like
Mhm.
we're shifting to this whole new reality. And so you know dealing with those trauma wounds, but like these traumatic situations, um part of the spiritual warrior is not being a victim of your circumstances, but seeing what you gained from that situation and taking everything out that can benefit you, that you can learn from and help others with, right? So it's very much, we're all spiritual warriors. That's the
That's
secret,
right.
right?
That's
Well, that's the
that's
secret.
true.
We
Hmm.
are, right? Because it's all about being a better version of yourself, being strong, being, tough. And I don't mean physically, but I mean emotionally and getting through situations, right? Because we're all here and we all at one point said, oh my God, I'm never gonna make it through this. And here we are, right? So that's something that you have to do, that shadow work. You will become the best version of you and you will be the happiest of your life because you'll be able to get
Right.
through those negative programs that you were programmed by, right?
That's it. That's it. And that's just it. You spoke to it right there. It's programming. It's the idea that, we're given a set of beliefs from the time that we're born until the time we leave this planet. Because as a medium, I hear it. I hear it from the other side. People talk about it. It's a relentless fight for your attention the entire time that you're here. And so we have society's expectations. We have the expectations that we place on ourselves. So if you can replace the triggers maybe with those expectations, those external expectations, it could be self expectations, but it's any time that you want to really just focus on what it is you want the most in healing. Because if we know that we can create our reality, then if we're not liking the reality that's presenting to itself to ourselves, we have
Create
the
a new one,
option to change it. Yeah, just create a new reality. And I think
right?
that, jumping around timelines is an example that it can be done. Maybe.
So how would you differentiate timelines versus um parallel universes or reality that we create, right? Like what's the
Mm,
difference between
sure.
creating a reality in front of me versus jumping to a different timeline versus jumping into a parallel universe? So because I
Mm,
feel like those
sure.
are trendy topics right now and I love the idea of all of that. So
Sure.
see if you can explain it, or maybe
Mhm.
what's your knowledge say about that?
Okay. Well, I think it has a lot to do with our environments, as far as what we're perceiving, our perception. We should be aware. So we're all going to agree today that, at least for the conversation, that we have the ability to create our entire existence based off of what we're thinking and what we're emoting, what our emotions are, leading us to experience,
Right.
right? So if you think about it from that way, we're always in the now moment. That's how it's shown in the Akashic records. Is we only technically have the now. So in
Okay.
this now moment, we're making up a set of associations or thought patterns that are creating the world around us. So I think the answer to your question is intentional setting. So when we set intentions, people may have heard that as, magic or healing. Like setting your intention is your energetic agreement to the universe. And when you're setting your intention to be on the highest possible timeline or the highest possible trajectory, the universe is answering us. So that's why I say it's all about our intentions. So all the things you just asked, it's really the universal answer here is, well, what are your intentions? What are you intending to have be experience? Like what is it that you're wanting to have an experience about? Because we know through many different teachers and many other different modalities, like thinking about Abraham Hicks. Abraham Hicks is another clear channel that works very similar to the Akashic Records energy. So we resonate really deeply with the Abraham Hicks works. And
Okay.
that's the method of manifestation. It's the idea that our thoughts create our reality. Our emotions help us to manifest it faster. So I would say it's setting those intentions and always knowing that we are being also guided as a collective to be on the highest timeline right now. And I think that information has been streaming down to a lot of different channelers. So the information's coming in, but it's new. It's new information.
Absolutely. I think that was very well said. Yeah. So
I hope so,
that
because I'm channeling, so
it better be.
it better be right. No, just kidding.
Right.
Those are
So
those expectations. See, you got to let those expectations go.
right.
Truth is
So
truth is very individualized. Truth is very
yes.
individualized. So we would say take what resonates, but also make your own connections. That's the most empowering thing we can do for each other is say, well, what does that mean for you? How might you
Yes.
get more out of that kind of energy? How might
Yes.
you make the most of this timeline or this experience?
So I mean, so that kind of jumps to another conversation. So when I see signs or numbers or things, I always like look up like what does it mean.
Hmm.
But you had brought something up. What does it mean to you, right? So like I have a friend of mine, and she's a really good friend. We actually share the same birthday, so she sees a lot of numbers, signs, and just like and so I'll send her every time I see a angel number. And I say, well, what does that mean? And she goes, I don't know. She's like, no two sites give me the same, definition. I said, well, what does it mean to you? She goes, I don't even, that's very interesting that you say, what does it mean to you? Right.
Yeah,
So
what does it
it,
mean to you? Right?
and talking about our thoughts project and create our reality, right? So everything is energy. You had brought this up previously. So everything is energy, everything is a frequency. And so when even your thought is a frequency. And so when you think about something,
Mhm.
you're putting that into the universe like a rubber band, like you're putting it out and you're bringing it back, right? So
That's right. Hmm.
there is a like just like with the casino and I put that out in the universe, hey, I want to pay for these courses, and the universe was like, this is the fastest way to make it happen. So
Yeah.
it literally, but again, that doesn't mean that you can sit on a mountain and think about everything that you want and it's just going to appear. Like you have to still do the work, you have to put the action in.
Bingo. But yes, you can sit on the mountain. I'm living proof you can.
Well, right, you can't because you do live
Literally.
in your mountain,
Literally.
but I
But I
mean,
get you. The
yeah,
work. And I have to be honest with you because we're humble beings, right? So it's hard for us to say like, yeah, I did all this. I
right,
did it with help because who we surround ourselves with is also a big factor here. Are
absolutely,
you living with people that recognize these beliefs to be true? Because if you're living in a collective group or a group of people where everybody's manifesting different things, there could also want to have the intention set that we're all manifesting towards a similar goal. And I think for me, that was the deal. That was the issue here. So the second awakening that I had, it's a good story. um, but it's the idea that we have to surround ourselves with the people we want to become. One of the things that he told me, and this will always be written in my heart and in my spirit, is that we can't heal in the places that we got hurt. And for me journeying away from the place of the places that I associated with my greatest pain literally caused me to pick up and move out of state because I needed to distance myself from people. And in that process, because when you're in it, it's hard to heal from it, right? When
Yes.
you're rolled up in it and you're dealing with those people all the time, or situations that may be toxic to your life and where you want to go, you can't heal where you've been hurt. It's very difficult. So through the process of removing myself through it, I did like 2.5 really intensive years now of self work. I'm not just working with you all, I'm also doing my own inner work as well.
Right.
Yeah, it's a process. It's worth it though. You're worth it. It's worth doing.
It definitely is.
100%.
And what you said is key. It's
Hmm.
it's not overnight. You've been doing it for 2.5 years, and it's an ongoing process because
That's
as
right.
you change, as you evolve, like, I'm gonna be honest here, and I'll talk
Hmm.
about this at some point, probably in a different show, but
Hmm.
the term spiritual warrior means something different to me now than it did 6 months ago, different 2 years ago when I started it, right? So
Hmm.
your understanding evolves, the world evolves, and so it's an ongoing process. And
That's right.
so we're always, building ourselves up, fixing it when we get torn down. It's just this wagon wheel of like hurt,
Hmm. That's right. Mhm.
essentially. So
We have to break
uh
it down. It's the tower moment, hun. It's the if I studied tarot, I also have been doing cards. My first deck was gifted to me by my mom. My mom was an incredible psychic. She was very intuitive. She didn't do it professionally, but she taught me tarot and symbology. But it's
okay.
the tower. It's the thinking of the tower card. It's the idea that you have to sometimes bring things down to the foundation so that it can be built from the foundation back up in a way that's conducive and healing. And that's
No,
what I'm hearing.
absolutely.
That's
I
big.
think, yes, that is huge
Mhm.
because
It's
you have
huge.
to, you can keep putting band-aids on these wounds, but eventually it's going to fester open and it's going to be
That's right.
uncontrollable and unfixable. You have to destroy it and, build it back from the
Mhm.
better foundation so that you're on sturdier ground, right? So
Yeah,
I,
for
I
sure.
definitely I definitely agree with that. So you had talked about this. I mean, you talked about so much. I want to talk about all of it. I can't even keep track of everything that we've
It's
talked about.
okay. It's good. It's all good. It's divinely
I
guided.
absolutely, and there will
Mhm.
be more shows. I hope. So you had talked about this second wave of awakening, right? And this is a huge piece of
It's big.
what we're talking about, right? So
Mhm.
tell me more about what you know about this second wave so that people can understand, because I just
Sure.
pre
Mhm.
context,
Sure.
this was my this was one of my awakenings. I probably had two of them, but this was my second one, and it was in 2021 ish, maybe 2020, somewhere around there.
Yep. We're
I
going to
have
talk
to like,
about that.
yeah.
The guide said yes.
Oh, so they're okay. They're confirming, good, because my
They're
memory is
confirming
bad.
it. Well, they said 9/11 was a big wake up for everybody. So
That was
2001 was a huge, that was one of my, prior to the timeline jump, that was the first timeline jump I ever had. But I would say the very first awakening I had was right before 9/11. And then through the whole 9/11. Yeah, I was going to say it's a big, that was a big time for people.
I think it was, and not just because of the name that we will not say
Okay.
because of
Hmm.
algorithms. I'm
Yeah.
not going to say that transpired prior to that were kind of like a culmination, right? They were
Hmm.
kind of boiling, and
Right.
so that was like the
It was a
boiling point.
pressure cooker. Pressure
Yes,
cooker. Pressure
yes,
cookers. They're big. They're big.
yes. So yeah,
Well, I'll
that
tell
was,
you what, Kevin, we were just talking about the tarot cards and the
yes,
symbology of the tower card
yeah.
right before we started heading down into that, to which we'll use code. But the idea here is, yeah, it's that is literally the thought that things had to be brought back down in order for it to be built up. But then something hijacked the building up, and that's another whole topic.
And I would love to talk about that too, because that is also right in my lane. I mean, I have a big lane here, so I have a lot of topics in my lane, right? So
That's cool.
yeah, I mean, I just feel like anything like this, because these are all
Mhm.
things that help people,
Sure.
because we're all
Yeah.
googling the same things. We're all looking, for the same answers. Um
Truth, right? We're all looking for truth.
yes, we are truth seekers. We have not even talked about galactic beings, entities, Pleiadians, Arcturians, you know, blue avians, mantis, uh, Pegasus. We haven't talked about any of this. All right. So what where do we even start with that, right?
We've been doing some channeling. I've noticed that every time there is a collective, either I don't know if you follow the Schumann resonance. If
I
you want
I
to talk
do,
about
but
that.
I don't really understand it. So
Mhm.
I guess that's just the level of activity in vibration. Is that
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's the oppression. If you were to see like the Earth as a visual, a frequency, the Schumann resonance shows you the amount of energy that's being produced. I mean, don't quote me on that. I'm clearly not a scientist. um, I only lived near Princeton. Okay, um, but it's the idea that there is a resonance, if you will, that there's a,
right?
and it could be they're able to give you a visual with scientific equipment. But then there's also space weather. We're very sensitive to our solar activity here,
Right.
obviously, and there's a lot of questions about what the sun really is and what its purpose is. And I would tell you the truth here is that there's a lot of things that we're still learning about, and that a lot of the things that are being talked about, there's a lot of truth, there's a lot of golden nuggets of truth in it. But so we would say to you that the Schumann resonance and solar activity is what tends to be what opens up me as a channel. Like I get more information comes through, I get them like downloads. Some of our listeners may hear it as like high ringing in their ears, or feeling like they've received information but they don't know what it is, or maybe they're when they're dreaming, they go off to sleep and they wake up tired, like they've been traveling all night, that kind of
Yep.
energy. So that's how we're receiving the information as star seeds. So yeah, we're here and we're being activated. I've been posting about it on my Facebook. So as the incoming transmissions have been coming in, I've been writing them out and just releasing them. Otherwise, I don't really know much about that stuff. I used to very much be I like my Ancient Aliens TV show, and I believe in a lot of that stuff. But when
Right.
like the David Wilcock stuff came out and the Blue Avian stuff, I kind of like shut down to that. The David Icke stuff used to scare me.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. But I always knew that there was truth there. I've been seeing UFOs, and I've been in contact, like even as a child, I have memories of seeing, things from beyond this physical location. I think they're interdimensional, most of them. But I mean, so I know that that's the truth for me, but some people, if that doesn't resonate, it's okay. You don't have
Right.
to, you know?
No, and I know that, like, so you had brought up a term starseed, and I feel like that is something that people are that's also trendy right now, right? So if you look at
Yeah, babe. Mhm.
statistics about on Facebook for how many people are hashtagging starseed, it's like probably
Mhm.
millions, and
It's crazy.
there's a lot of groups that are talking about star seeds and starseed activation. So, what is a star seed from your point of view, either from the records or channel, however you want to?
Sure. Well, we all come from a different place. We all come from different points of origin in this universe. It's a mighty big universe, Spirit said. And the idea here is that we have all different types of people here that agreed to be here during this time. So we know, you should know if you are not from here. For me, I can only speak to my own personal experience without delving too much into private sessions. But I've also heard a lot of people talk about this through hypnosis and also through readings. But the
Right.
idea here is that even as a small child, like I always felt like I wasn't supposed to be here. Like I actually came in speaking a different language. My mom would still tell you today that I spoke. We call it light language. So, and I also had an accent, and I also had very vivid memories of not being here. One of the first things I ever said out loud was Fomalhaut. And so my mom looked it up, and it turns out to be another star system. So I believe that's where I might be from. That's where I
Okay.
thought I was going this lifetime, but they got me here through, enticing me with coffee. That's how I got pulled back,
They
literally
do
back
that with
to Earth.
everybody. Coffee.
I
Coffee.
love
It's
my
that.
coffee. That's how they're like, you're coming back. And I still love my coffee, so I'll probably be back again.
I think you need to do a coffee brand and sell that. I think that would go, like, add that into
That'd
your
be fun.
brand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be awesome. Hey, why not?
Like a medium ghost roast, you know?
Hey, yeah, that's awesome. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so you spoke light language, which
Light language. Yep.
again is like, so diving in, light language is it's a different language, but it's like a galactic language. It's like, is
Yep.
that how would you explain it? Because it's not earthly. So
Uh-uh.
universal language.
Universal. Yeah. Yeah, I would
I
say
have
so. Numbers. And it's weird because I actually have the condition called dyscalculia, which means it's like dyslexia of numbers. So I don't
Okay.
know why they entrusted it with me because sometimes I'm like, I'm maybe getting it backwards, but the universe obviously knows, so it gets course corrected. I can do the math when I'm in channel, but when I'm not
Yeah.
in channel, I don't, the numbers are not my thing. So for me, it was mostly energy. I could talk. A lot of times when I would channel other people, it sounded as if my voice would change. I don't do that today. I'm not one of those trance mediums. I still have a spirit guide that I work with, but I keep that pretty private just because it's one of those things I was taught to do. The
Right.
traditions I learned in was to keep your stuff private. So, but I have what I would consider a direct line to higher self consciousness. And so that information first and foremost flows through that higher consciousness. And higher consciousness speaks a different language. I remember being a kid looking in the library and, those, I'm from the 70s and 80s. So we had those big encyclopedia sets. I remember going through all the books like, oh, hieroglyphics. Nope, that's not what I'm speaking or seeing. Oh,
Yeah.
Greek, Roman. Oh, it's all Greek to me. None of it ever resonated. So it's not from Earth, clearly.
Yeah. No, it's funny. I also had
Mhm.
a set of encyclopedias as well, but I did not buy
Yeah,
them. So
that's so
uh,
funny. I think everybody had those.
I feel like they did, like the Britannica encyclopedia. So
Let's hope that trend doesn't come back around again. It was
I
weird.
know. I know. Well, I don't think it will. So
Okay, yeah, that's true.
there's too many
Yeah,
people that are like save the trees and whatnot. So I
yeah.
feel like they're
Oh.
not gonna make that. So I have a question here. This is kind of a totally off track. Um, I know that dragon's blood is good for like clearing energy and things and like blocking out bad energy. Does that also keep good spirits away? Because
Mm.
I know that like sage will also cleanse negative entities, but spirits are spirits. So if do and I guess the question is, well, if you believe it does, then it does.
Yeah.
So
Well, think of it. Think of it like what we call words. When we put words together, we call it spelling, right?
right,
So words have power in the beginning, no matter which tradition or philosophy or religion that you may have, followed or you subscribe to. It's always been the word. The word is the intention. The word is supposed to be good. You're supposed to use the word for good. We should never use the word against the good or the highest good for all involved. But you're right,
right,
it's spelling. We think about it. Magic, if you think about it, like alchemy and magic, which I've also studied just as for fun, because I'm weird. Yeah,
right.
it's one of those things, because it's just other things
Yeah,
to think about. But they're
right,
talking about it, spirits talking about it as the idea that we speak it into existence, and we are in a time energetically here now in this presence. Here in 2023 where that is happening, whereas before it might not have happened so quickly. You talk to people are manifesting and intending for things in such leaps and bounds right now. Like people are doing really well, and I think it's amazing. So when you're using that intention for the highest good, and what you believe is what you will receive, that is correct. So we're
okay.
saying yes, that's a big energy.
So dragon's blood incense does also keep away good spirits then. That is the answer?
What do you believe?
Or so it's what you believe, right? So it's okay.
Yeah. It's
I
a
guess I
representation. Dragon blood would be the representation of what you're trying to magically work, right? So if
it's a
if
tool.
that's what if you're asking it to do that, because also if you're working like with plants or herbs or oils or essences, you saw me. I always carry around all my sacred oils and herbs with me everywhere I go because I've infused it with that intention. So I'll say thank you for serving me. Thank you for allowing me to use this for the light. And so for this, I use it to clear negative energy, but I don't want to chase out my ancestors or my goody teas and all those
Right.
fun people. So
Exactly. Yeah, and
yeah,
that's a big one because I feel
that's
like
big.
there are misconceptions about that, right? And I kind of I wanted to
Yep,
clear the air on that.
for
No
sure.
pun intended, right? Because
Yeah,
I
no.
have I I have
Mhm.
a pet who passed away
Oh.
this year, and
Mhm.
I'm still not over it, and so I like to make sure that he can come around anytime that he wants to,
Mhm.
um, because I was doing some spiritual stalking when he first passed. And like I wasn't obviously was not ready for it at all. Animals and having animal communication. I feel like we could just do a separate episode on
Yes.
that.
Yeah, we should. Yeah, we could. He's very much they don't show me the sex, so whenever I channel animals, it's always he. But
Yeah.
I was seeing that this beautiful energy, does he rattle, he shows me he can move things. So Something about where his stuff is.
Um, so I mean, he was very smart, and he was able to like open
Super
doors
smart.
and things, yeah, like on his
Yeah.
own. So
So look for that. He's so very much with you. He's so very much with you. I got that it's okay to love again. It's okay to it's okay now. So if you're thinking about it, he's definitely giving you the pause up on that one.
the pause up, I love
He
that.
gave you pause up. He and lots of love, like kisses and oh, so sweet.
Yeah, yeah, he was
That's
my German
adorable.
Shepherd, and
Mm.
I had him since he was 6 weeks old, and he
Oh,
passed when he was 8.5. I believe it was from leukemia.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I did not do like the in-depth, expensive tests, but the
Mm-hmm.
blood work kind of pointed to that. Kind of go back to,
Mm-hmm.
so when you're using any kind of tool like incense or Palo Santo, sage, things like that, um,
Sure.
set your intention, right? That's the most
Mm-hmm.
important. Set
Yep.
your intention so that way you can let the good
Yeah.
ones in and keep the bad ones out.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, like as you're saying that, setting the intention, I was grabbing my water, because we know that people have done research on intention and how it changes the molecules of water, even. So the molecules, I think it was Dr. Emoto, who did
Yes. Yep.
that. Yeah, and
The
so we can
the
say that you
frozen
can
water.
see it. Yeah, the
He did.
frozen water.
And he also did the experiment with rice as well. When you
Yes.
speak negative into a jar of rice, it ferments faster, but it fluffs and it grows beautifully if you speak positive words. You're beautiful. I want to iterate that. Um, that same method and thought process applies to human beings,
That's
right?
right.
So
Hmm.
make sure that when you're looking at yourself in the mirror, that you're not saying, "Oh, I don't like this about me. I don't like that about me." Say, "I love this about me." Say, "I love that
Hmm.
about me." You know, there's nothing wrong with wanting to change. Like with if
Absolutely.
you want to change something, but make it a positive change. Don't make it like, "I hate this, so I want to, something different."
That's
You know,
right.
love yourself, love others, and speak like you said, it's spelling.
Hmm.
So we're tying in all of these
That's
different
right.
points that we've made, right? So you're spelling into the universe and putting it out there, and you're just loving that person's energy, that soul, right? Because that's
That's
how
right.
you can get astral leeches and things that hook into your energy, right? So, and those
Absolutely.
things from psychic vampires and energy vampires, they can drain you. So, obviously, this is all part of loving each other. We're all one, right? The law of one. If you want to go into the law of one, which
Yes.
I'm not an expert on the law of one, but I have
Hmm.
been following some. I did try to do Ra's teaching and the audio book, but listening to the actual original audio is like I need a
Big.
doctorate degree to understand that, but it is strong.
So
So
good. Hmm.
it is good. It is good.
Or the
There's-
Kabbalion. The Kabbalion was one of the biggest books I ever read.
I have not read that
Teaches
one
you.
yet.
That's great, and that's free. You can get that online free through the Gutenberg project. So it's a good
Okay.
one. It ties in all those philosophies. But you're right. You should be talking to yourself with kindness. One of the things we give people during healings or sessions is personal affirmations based on their sessions, so that we recognize that when we speak to ourselves with love and care, like you said, that's what shows up for us. So if you want to have a body that's ease, and it's flowing and it's working as it should be, right down from ourselves to our consciousness, we have the power to create that by what we speak to ourselves. I'm glad that you brought that up. That's a big one. Affirmations.
Absolutely. I mean, it's huge, like again, putting that out in the universe, it's a rubber band. So you get that,
That's
you
right.
put that out, it's gonna come back.
Hmm.
For instance, there's somebody that I don't want to say who they are, but anybody that's watching this will know that this person was always sick, and they were always talking about how sick they were and how sick they're going to get and
Hmm.
how sick they feel. And like they would like make up, I don't want to say make up symptoms, but it was
Hmm.
psychosomatic. It became
That's
very,
right.
you created that reality where you're always sick and then physically manifested. I mean, I was stressed at work about this new job. This was back in 2010
Hmm.
or 2009, and I had this new job, and it was like fresh out of college, and I was so excited about the money and being on my own. I had my own apartment, and so this was so new and everything. But then I got to the work and I started going, I don't know if this is right for me. And I started feeling the stress of those thoughts, those words, they do become spelling. You're doing a spell on yourself.
That's right.
And
Hmm.
so it's important to
That's right.
speak with intention. I mean, I guess
Yes.
that's the too long didn't read. It's to speak
Mm.
with intention, right?
I love it. Yeah, for sure. And because that brings a point that kind of speaks to egregores, or what are they? If you've heard of them,
Pulpas,
egregores. Yeah, they're like thought
thought
forms. Yep.
monsters.
Thought
Yeah,
monsters, or just, well, we would even just say thought forms, because it's those beliefs that may not serve us that we have to take a look at.
right,
But our thoughts, if we know and we're saying and we're agreeing, for the sake of this conversation, that our thoughts create our reality. So if we don't like something, or if we're always focusing on the negativity and not seeing the positivity or the balance of this experience, because Earth is a duality experience. We live in a duality experience, which means we're always being presented with both sides of everything. So we have
right,
negative, we have positive, right? Just in its simplest form. But
right.
egregores are those thought forms, or collective thoughts, or entities, or just thought processes that believe to be created, right? And sustained by the collective consciousness of groups of people. So other people can add to that. That'd be like your neighbor in your cubicle that also hates his job. So you guys are now creating that together. So
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think like if enough people think about something and focus that consciousness, that energy will manifest into whatever you want it to, right? So there was a time back
yep.
where there was a hurricane that was going to hit Sarasota, and the people of Sarasota, which is like the spiritual capital of Florida. I don't know if it's like of the U.S., but that's like where people go when they're having like awakenings. And so there was a hurricane that was going to hit Sarasota, and it missed, and it formed a heart shape over Sarasota because enough people were manifesting to redirect it, right? So
Yes, for
that
sure.
kind of that topic,
Power of
that
prayer. Mm.
yes, power of prayer, power of thought, it's all
Mhm.
the same. Prayer is thought. You're basically saying, so like, it's
That's
all the
correct.
same. Yeah. So I think that is something that and this actually goes into something that I found a long time ago, the
Mhm.
secret, right? The secret
Yes. Hmm.
is a documentary out there on YouTube. You can watch it for free. There's a book out there. It's called The Secret. This is part of this is part of that manifestation, right? So
Yes, for sure.
it's steps to get rid of the programming, and part of doing the work, doing, manifesting what you want. So um and so that kind of goes into
Hmm.
I mean that goes into everything we talked about, right? But
Hmm.
so I watched the Next Level Soul podcast. I don't know if you ever seen that.
Yes. Big
I
fan.
love
Big
Yes,
fan.
I love
Big.
his stuff, and
Hmm.
he has episodes on where they talk about NDEs, right? Near death experiences. And I've had a couple situations where I should have died in my life, both via car accidents, and I didn't, but I wasn't dead, so I don't call it an NDE, right? I wasn't like out and then back in. Um, so he had this guest on, and she had an incident, and she had passed, and then she said she said that when she closed her eyes and she opened them, she was on the other side, and there was no tunnel, there was no like white light, and it's like I feel like people have these stories of I was surrounded by my ancestors, my loved ones. And I'm gonna talk about ancestors here in a second. She had talked about she just was on the other side in this beautiful garden with colors that didn't exist. And I'm thinking in my mind, I'm like, I've seen the color palette. How do you have colors that don't exist? Like in my mind, I'm thinking that, but I also know scientifically there are spectrums of light here. We
That's
can
right.
see what's in here, but the ultraviolet and things that X-rays that we can't see are outside. So I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, well, maybe there is colors that don't. I'm like, but what would that look like? But then I'm
You know
going
why?
into
They just said because that's the light inside of us. We can't perceive it while it's inside of us, but when they cross, or when we cross, we become able to see that visualization because we've stepped out of the physical construct.
okay,
That's
kind of going
big.
back to you
That's
can't.
new information. Yeah. That's new
y-
information.
Okay, That because
Wow.
I've never heard that before.
I'm gonna write it down. Yeah. They're talking about that's the inner sense of who we are as a soul being. That's the light consciousness that we are. So to be able to visualize when you're crossed or when you've crossed into spirit, that's no longer contained within you. So you become aware of it. That's the only time that we can really become aware of that is having a
Okay.
near death experience or when we step out of consciousness. That's
Okay.
big. Thank you. I'm gonna have to dive
No, thank
deeper into
you.
that one. Yeah, that's new information. I love that. We get always new information. So I'm like, I'm gonna have to do a deep dive on that one.
Yeah. Like I'm very curious
That's
about that.
big. Hmm.
So I mean, but I mean that is also and so to kind of jump a little forward, she had said that she was standing there with her other selves, right? And so
Hmm.
this goes into time is an illusion.
Yeah.
So she was standing there with her past self from 1876 and her future self from
Wow.
2300, and they were all happening at the same time because we are
Um,
fragments. I think I'm again, I'm sharing my opinion here, my knowledge, research, things I've done. And if you if I'm wrong, please correct me, right? Because I want to have correct information. So we are fragmented. Like if we want to start and talk about source is like a floating pool of smoke. And then we are created by, as law of one states, that in order for source to experience itself, it has to create separate individual entities. And so we break off to like a little wisp of that, and we create our higher self. And then after that, we create separate, because now we're still in higher dimensional. We're still in sixth density, seventh, eighth. We're still, I mean, at that point, you're in 12th density because you're still source. You're maybe into 11th density and you're descending, right? And so
mhm.
as we go into other lives, past lives, which are technically not past because everything is happening now in the moment, right? So as we enter that, that's how you see, like, it fragments off, right? So you have like, I hate the super mic. So like it splits into fragments, and you have like your master soul, or like what I think Grandma D calls it, the oversoul,
Mhm.
right? So that's like the high self. And then you have, so like me, I'm complete, but I'm not complete, right? So you've heard those, you don't need anybody else, you're complete. And then you hear those, but I need that other person is my other half. And it's like, so you don't know what to believe because you're like, but
Mhm.
am I complete or am I not complete? And the truth is you are complete and perfect just the way that you are.
Yes. Mhm.
But there are fragments of you that are not necessary to be joined in order for you to be complete, but they are you. It's like multiplicity, right? The old movie with Michael Keaton. You just made copies of
Yes.
yourself, and she was
Wow.
seeing these other selves. And what she had said was that, and I'm hoping you can attest to this or speak to this or add anything. She had said that when we suffer through something in the life that we live now, we are in essence giving that other life a break. So if we are suffering through heartache, death of parents at a young age, or, like the death of a
Yeah.
pet, right? We're giving that other life the chance to not experience that suffer. I don't know if this is true. I don't know.
Mhm.
I guess it kind of makes sense because there's balance. There's the duality. Now, jumping in to kind of add this thought, because again, like I told you, I'm an Aquarius, so I have these thoughts that roll. Bashar had mentioned we are actually a trinity. He's like, but I won't go into that, so I can't really explain what he meant. But we're
Mhm.
actually a trinity, not a duality. So
Well, yeah, there's that middle path, right? I'm actually writing that's what my book is about. We're talking about that middle path awareness where you can be aware of all of it at the same time. So
okay,
yes, that is correct information.
Okay. So
You
it's like
articulate you just articulated it so beautifully that that's exactly how we see it, so we're in agreement 100%.
I'm
We
channeling
only
you,
That's
channeling
right.
them.
Hey, that's cool. That's awesome. But
It
it's the now. We're in the now. So yeah, you're right. So if you can see it, we know that light is reflective and it's almost as if like you can envision it like a diamond.
like
So
a
the way
prism.
that the light, like a prism, so the way that the light resides within us can go in many different directions. So we would say that's multidimensional or multi-timelines. It's very like the movie Interstellar. Are
Oh,
you
I love
familiar with
that
that?
movie. Yes.
That's
Oh
a
my
great
God.
one. You can get
It
so much
mine
messages from there, right?
I got
Me
so
too.
mind fucked watching that movie because
Mhm.
I said, well, wait a sec. I mean, I feel like we could do like at least half of an episode just talking on that. But like, I was
Mhm.
like, wait a second. So in he was always it was a
Yeah,
loop because
that's right. Mhm.
when you first saw him trying to decipher the sand, the dirt on the floor, the sand on the floor, it was actually him
That's right.
inside of the it was a what was it like a Merkaba, maybe? It was like
Mhm.
he was inside of the black hole, but he was inside of the Tesseract is what they called it, right?
Yes, that's it. That's the word.
He was inside the Tesseract and he was the one playing the harp strings essentially.
Mhm.
So then that means that timeline hadn't occurred yet. So that person would have eventually been the next person to do it, right? The loop. I mean, that
Yeah,
seems
that's big.
it's confusing, but
Mm-mm.
that's kind of the whole timeline thing is and
And
so
yeah,
the one thing that I've loved about our conversation so far, aside from everything, is that everything that we've talked about ties in to just the same pieces, right? Perception,
that's right.
reality, and time, and
Mhm.
the perception of time is that right. So
I once channeled Einstein. I did a massage therapy event at Princeton University in the hall where he used to lecture. And so I was just working, and all of a sudden I knew that somebody was coming in with information, and I was so tickled that it was Einstein. But the word that he gave me was tesseract. So
okay.
and then the student, in because I was working with math students, I said, "What does this mean to you?" And he says, "I was just working on an equation." And he goes, "That's the answer." So I didn't even know I was. I'm like, dude, I just show up. I don't. It's like, whoo, you know.
You're like,
It's
yeah,
like,
I don't know, I'm just here, okay,
I'm
like
just
here
gonna
you
give you
go.
what I got. Yeah.
Right.
But that movie
I
was
mean,
eye opening. It was big because it was actually I work a lot with people ongoing. Like one of the things I do in the Akashic Records coaching that I do during the day. I say during the day because I do all that other metaphysical stuff at night and on
good night,
weekends,
right,
right?
right,
Um, but one of the things that was brought up time and again in a session, I was connecting with, not to give too much information, but at the same time, I know I'm allowed to talk about certain things. But
right,
our dads were connected, even though our dads didn't know each other. Both of our dads crossed, and both of our dads were very instrumental in our healing that's been going on in the past 2 years. And one of the things, messages that came through was to watch Interstellar, watch it through the eyes of understanding like your parents and like maybe your soul contracts or why you're here, and how there could be other examples of you through time and space that may be experiencing different things. But what the takeaway here with Interstellar, if I could give you the real golden spot there, would be the idea
please,
that yeah, it's big. It's the idea that that's that representation, that father in that movie, the one that was able to, knock the books off the bookshelf to the daughter in the past from the
right,
future. He was just basically showing us that that's the ability that we have as higher consciousness beings, that we can become aware of that while we're in the physical body. That's what 5D is, and that's where we're going. That's the energy that we're going to be able to make all of the connections through time and space. It's coming.
okay. So we're at an hour 40 and we
Oh,
have
wow.
just finally, I know, we have
Wow.
just finally hit the topic of 5D. Okay. And 5D is huge right now. Like that
It
is
is.
so trendy. That's trendier than trauma bond
That's wild.
because I know everything. Okay. So you could tell how excited I am about this. I've been staring at it on my notes over here. Like we'll get to it. We'll get to it. So 5D is exists outside of time and space, right? This is again my understanding. Again, I'm looking forward to adding anything to anything I don't understand.
Sure.
As we understand, is fifth density is it exists outside of time and space, right? So that is why 3D, third density, is the linear timeline. That's why we
Hmm.
understand
Sure.
it as a past and the future are separate, right? And then we have now. But the truth is, the now is always the present.
Yeah.
The now is always the future and the past, right? Because it's now. It's now. It's now. You know what I mean?
Yes. Hmm.
5D is, like you were saying, you can go into, he was able to, I'm just going to say that movies have a way of telling us the truth without telling us the truth.
100%. You know why? Hollywood. Think of
Absolutely.
Hollywood. The Hollywood
Well,
tree.
yep.
Did you hear
That's
that story?
I did. I
Hmm.
followed Jordan Maxwell, God rest his soul, and I
Hmm.
loved listening to him talk about symbols and symbology and the Hollywood tree and whatnot.
Yeah.
So,
We
but
have
I
free
mean,
will. They have to
absolutely
disclose it. They have to disclose what they're doing to us. You know,
right.
free will.
Exactly. So, because I get off on tangents,
It's
I,
okay. Me
I
too.
I didn't have to say that, but I did. You know what I
It's
mean? Like I
important.
knew that
Yeah.
was gonna throw off like the conversation, like you know, but I had to just throw that in there. Like so 5D, he was able to go to different parts of the bookshelf, and he inside the Tesseract, and this is people
Yeah.
who know either they know the movie or they have no idea. He was inside of a Tesseract cube. He was inside the Tesseract, and he was behind the bookshelf of this bedroom. And the bedroom was his daughter's bedroom, and her name was Murph, for Murphy's Law, which is anything that can happen will happen, but I believe it's anything that can go wrong will go wrong. I think he just changed it to make her feel better about her name. But
Hmm. Hmm.
he was behind, and this is Matthew McConaughey we're talking about too. So I could be like, all right, all right, all right. So
I love
so
it.
he's in the, he's in the bedroom behind the bookshelf, and this is where she kept saying this book just flew off the shelf, and he's like, Murph, that didn't happen, but it was him in the future making this happen, and he was able to float because he's in space, so he was floating between different elevations, and it was like in 5D. Matthias De Stefano can actually explain that a lot better than I can, but that is kind of where he was able to access these different points in time by going to these different up, down, left, right, diagonal, because those are the different dimensions in 5D, right? So he was
Yes.
able to access these different points in time and um, trigger different moments, and those things impacted the future, right? So um,
Yeah.
I had
I can.
heard something recently. I think it was like within the last day or so, because I put these on as I'm laying in bed at night, and so somebody had said that if you do something in the present, it actually impacts what happened in the past. I don't know. I always thought if you do something in the past, it would impact the present or the future, because that kind of, from a linear point, that makes sense. But you create a different timeline where you split off from that, right? And so that's kind of the way I explain it. Now, to throw one more thing in there, because again, my information comes from Matthias De Stefano. If for those of you that don't know him, he
Hmm.
remembers everything, all
Hmm.
of his past lives and everything. So he knows he knows everything about his past life and his past life before that, and the creation of the world. And he's an amazing person to watch. And he had an interview with Aubrey Marcus where he was talking about 5D, and he said, people are talking about 5D and 3D, and what do you, and he kind of laughed, Matthias did, and he laughed and he said, you can't go into 5D. He goes, that means you would die, your body would die, we would go to heaven essentially. So I kind of understood, and I've also heard previously that 5D is actually a mindset. It is a mind. It's a mindset more than it is a physical realm, a physical place. Because essentially, like my father, he passed 12 years ago or 11 years ago, so he is essentially in 5D. He's not a physical entity. He is a spirit entity, right? So
That's right.
that is how he was able to access 5D. Now, when you access 5D, you're like a visitor. You're not. you're accessing it through your higher self, maybe, or like how you access 5D, but you're not a permanent resident. Like your body still is here. So I thought that was really interesting that Matthias had said, like, it kind of, he liked the question, but I think he was trying to like explain you're not going to be going to like a new dimension. And then I've also heard people who have said, yeah, you're a light body. Your light will become bigger and you'll turn into a light body, the crystalline bodies that we are. And so then you kind of, there are people that are painting this picture where it's a whole new world. And I know Dolores had painted this picture where there's two separate earth, like the earth is like splitting off and going into a whole separate one.
That's right.
So I think people are also believing and thinking that they're going to turn into a crystalline entity, a light entity, and essentially become the light being in a fifth dimension where you don't work, you don't have bills because that stuff doesn't exist in 5D. Um, and then like the 3D is gonna be chaos and war and all that stuff. So
Mhm.
so there's so many different beliefs and
Mhm.
truths. you know,
Mhm.
there's so many of those that I would like to kind of get your I would love to get your understanding of 5D, what it really is, or what you're being told it is, channeling records, whatever. Please shower me with your information.
Beautiful. You said it well, but it's that recognition that you are beyond your physicality. It's just understanding. You said it when you said the belief system or the thought patterns, because it becomes an idea here. I know we'll take it back a little bit into the conversation. We talked about the black box or time as a construct. Time as a construct was put onto this planet. Before we were ever here. So it was already a system in place, if you will. So we come into the physicality as a higher consciousness light being, into this avatar, if you will,
Right.
into this body that we're meant to here to explore, learn, and grow. We were only meant to come here and to explore, learn, and grow. But somehow along the way, this is probably a conversation for another time. There was
Absolutely.
yeah, I was gonna say, like, there's a lot more here, friends. But the idea, or the meat and potatoes. Let's give you the point. The point here is that once we start to recognize who we really are, it's just, are we unzipping the meat suit, or are we just waking up and unplugging ourselves from the matrix?
That's funny. So I love that you said that because in my previous video, my whys of why I'm doing this podcast, I had basically referred to our body as a meat suit. Obviously, the other part is the Matrix. I've
Mhm.
I love the movie. I think there are. I've watched a video on Gaia about the Hollywood and the synchronicities with the Matrix and how basically it was it, the Matrix is a documentary, right?
Pretty much.
And
Mhm.
so that kind of goes into if we're in a simulation, simulacra theory, you have Plato's allegory. So those are all things that really kind of shaped
Sure.
our humanity. And that's how, we came about with the Matrix. And so I think one of the, I could talk about the Matrix like all day, but one of
Mhm.
the parts that I loved about the movie was with when Neo was walking in to meet the Oracle for the first time. And she said this. She goes, "And don't worry about that vase." And he turned and knocked it over, and he was like, "Oh, sorry." He goes, and she said, "I said, don't worry about it." And she said, "What's going to tickle your fancy later is you're gonna is would you have broken that if I didn't say anything?" Right. So you
Yeah.
have that again, tying back to words and manifestation and everything. So
The true
that's
nature
a
of
good
reality. That's
yes,
the true nature of reality, my friend. That's who
yes,
we
and
all are.
absolutely, absolutely. So I
And
mean,
and maybe taking it one step further, how our belief systems may have entrapped us.
well, and that's that absolutely
Yeah.
with our programming is
Yeah.
our beliefs. Yes. And Morpheus had actually said a quote, and I think I maybe shared it to my Facebook,
Mhm.
but he had said there are people that are so inured by the system, they're so dependent on it that when you try to unplug them, they will violently fight. They will violently fight to keep it. And I feel like we are in that battle right now because this and I'm going to kind of make this assumption here that the the battle that we're fighting and the awakening we're going through and the, you know, the mass awakening is a spiritual battle, right? Because it's a spiritual battle for your consciousness. And
Which
so
is that's it right there. That's the
that's
commodity here.
exactly, your consciousness is their currency, right?
Yeah.
So when you awaken, you take away their power over you. And when I say they, that's a longer story for another time, but just think about the puppet masters are the people that don't want you to awaken, right? It's their control system. And so
Mhm.
that's what happens is when you start tearing down people's system to rebuild it to show them the reality. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
Neo could not deal with it because it was such a shock to the system. Like everything I thought, you know, was real is not. So
Yeah.
um
You are your own king or you're your own queen. You are your own divine higher self consciousness. And then everything else that you're interacting with is fighting for your attention. Right. It's like advertising. Like
absolutely.
everything is trying to get your attention. We're always being
Yes.
hypnotized. Things are always pressing for our consciousness and our awareness. So when you step back from that and say, like, fuck this, I ain't doing this anymore. Like I'm
Right.
a free agent here,
Yeah.
that's when you step out of the matrix and it's possible to live outside of it. I'm living proof. There are people doing it.
Absolutely.
We're doing it.
Absolutely. And I think that that's a huge, like that's a whole separate topic show in
That's
itself, but
right.
you
Yeah, for
know,
sure.
I want to emphasize a point that you had made is no matter
Mhm,
what path you follow, what direction you go, whether it's Laura's
mhm,
group or this podcast or yours or so and so
mhm.
or next, you know, next level soul, the destination is the same.
That's right.
Everybody has a different journey. So it's not important that you join this group to follow that path. It's important that you just do the work and you show up, right? Because like you said,
That's it.
knowledge, I love that you said this, knowledge is power, but it's nothing without action. And that is phenomenal. Like that is like the
Mhm,
best thing I've heard in 5 minutes because I've heard some amazing
mhm.
best things through in the last 2 hours. So
Awesome.
um
Mhm.
yeah, so I think that that is huge is just show up for yourself, right?
Yeah.
You know, and take the action, you
Take
know.
the action. Yeah.
I,
That's
yeah,
all we're required to do is show up. And the path will light its way. That's one of the things too. Like you will still get to your same destinations. Sometimes we have to travel down different roads for a little bit. Like you said, like sometimes it's shadow work, sometimes it's just pure joy. But to trust that you're going exactly in the direction that you're intending to go, but to understand that you also have a choice in that. I always tell people like they have the remote control for that destiny. It's not something that's outside of us, it's inside of us.
right.
So connecting with that higher self consciousness is the easiest way to channel that. And I think everybody can do that for sure.
I think that's a big one is everybody can do that, right? Because I think people
Absolutely.
in the beginning they looked to psychics and mediums and fortune tellers and tarot, like they looked at all these people that were like the Sylvia Browns, right? And the people that they looked up to them and like the John Edwards and like, oh my God, you have a gift. Like they just like threw money at them,
Right.
not realizing that they themselves can do it. Right. So this kind of goes back to everybody has a
Sure.
gift. And it's, you know, some people are more developed obviously than others, but
Mhm.
I love that. I love
And
that.
ask for help. If you need help, just ask for help. There are people that will help you. There's a lot of information that's even free. YouTube. I spent a lot of my time, forget it. We talked about the mud floods and like the Tartarians and like we can go on and on about that because, but that was free. That didn't cost me anything except my time. It's
Right.
like,
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's the same here. I mean, everything that I've gained and knowledge and everything, it's all free. Right. So um I love it. I love it. I feel like is there anything else that you want to talk about? I mean, we're at 2 hours here. I can keep going.
wow, that's
But I
awesome.
mean, we have literally covered so many different topics on a surface level that I
Mhm.
think this is perfect for setting up in-depth episodes maybe later where like maybe they're half-hour long bits talking. And
Sure.
again, time is an
Yeah.
illusion, so it doesn't matter,
Yes.
right? Time is not
That's
real.
true. That's right.
We can, you know, focus and deep dive into so many topics that we have
Awesome.
covered, and I think that's phenomenal. So
Yeah, I would tell people also take a break a little bit. If anybody's been getting, this stuff isn't it's not always light and love. Like that's a
yes,
misnomer,
yes,
right? It could be messy. It could be, We could be fun. We would say take some breaks too. Don't be always absorbing everything. We would tell people if you're an empath or you're very sensitive or you're feeling like you're having shifts in your life and there's a lot of like awakenings happening for you. My biggest suggestion would be to step away for a little bit, go immerse yourself in some nature, take a hike, or just be present. Maybe, being present can look like a lot of different things. For me, it's cooking in the kitchen, making grandma's recipes, hanging out with
Yeah.
my family and stuff like that, hanging out with my friends, talking to you, that kind of stuff. So take a break from it a little bit, but also set the intention, if you will, to be more of that's one of the call to actions right now to ease through this time period of transitioning is what we're doing, is to be more present, to also be more aware that you are putting your own energy into things, and you want to make sure that what you're putting your energy into is worthy of your time and it's worthy of your energy, and to take breaks if you need to.
Taking breaks is critical to, keeping that healthy mindset, right?
Sure.
Take a step back
Yeah.
and do what makes you happy.
Yeah.
It's not all about
Yeah.
keeping your head in the books.
Because it gives you time for self-reflection. Self-reflection is how we can like take the information that we received and kind of work with it. If we're constantly open and receiving, even like as a channel, I don't do this all the time. I have to shut it off because I can't really acclimate what I'm receiving and hearing and learning and growing if I'm always in it. So we would say
Right.
like self-reflection and really just knowing your own energy really well is a good idea, because it's another way that we can practice mindfulness here. And that's really what we're also being asked to do, is try to be present, be mindful, and be aware of what we're doing. And taking care of ourselves is important.
Absolutely, especially in these times where anxiety is high and depression is also high, and
Yeah. Mhm.
they just want to throw medications at you, and then medications for the side effects, and that's a whole separate subject we can get into. But I feel like we should just do a show on like healthy living, healthy
Weekly.
eating, healthy mindful,
Down for it.
and
For
yeah,
sure.
because I definitely got topics about food and all
Mm.
that. So um no, but
Awesome.
that is absolutely one thing to, take breaks, because being mindful is also part of the spiritual warrior nature, right? It's
Mhm.
being mindful about your own emotions as well as other people's emotions around you, and reading the situation. And it doesn't mean that you're an expert or a master. What it's mastery of emotion
That's
is what
right.
that is, right? So that is how you keep the anxiety low, the depression away, and that you stay healthy. A healthy mind makes for a healthy body, right?
That's
And a
right.
healthy life. So
That's right. That's beautiful. So well said.
I think that's all that I think I'm tapped out of advice. And um so I this was phenomenal. I said, look, I'm not going to take up too much of your time. I know we're both busy, and I said it's not going to be like a 3-hour show, and it's 2 hours and 4 minutes right now. So,
It's wild.
but that was all. I mean, that was all just, I feel like, pouring heart into the topics and the words, and redirecting that to everybody who receives this, right? And if you're
Right.
watching this, you're
Beautiful.
meant to receive it. If you're watching it and it doesn't resonate with you, it's a seed that has been planted, and it will grow, and you will understand when you are meant to understand. So I'm gonna leave it off with that, because again, I don't think I could even top that again. So anything else that you want to add?
That's it. I'm just proud of everybody for tuning in and listening. And we see you. I see you wherever you are. And, Kevin and myself, we can help. And if not, we know who to get you in touch with. We have a very vast network of friends. But yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm proud of everybody for showing up and for doing the work and for listening and thinking about ways that they can start to recognize, who they are, where they are, how they're going to navigate this experience with the best amount of joy in their hearts.
All right. Well, on that note, thank you for watching. And I think you can definitely look forward to another episode of me and international medium Tara Malouf, because I mean, this one was phenomenal. We're going to deep dive into other topics, and that list is being put together as we speak. So,
Yes, taking notes.
right. Right. All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Hey, I'm Kevin, the host of the Spirit Warrior podcast. I want to thank you for watching this episode with Tara Malouf. We had a great conversation. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If there's a topic that you want to see us do a deep dive in for future episodes, please let us know in the comments. Thanks, and I look forward to hearing from you.